Hi, I'm Dick Deming, Medical Director of MercyOne Cancer Center and founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Thanks for coming to the Cancer Education Series. You're in for a treat. I'm in for a treat. We're going to have a conversation with my friend Fred Nelson. This Cancer Education Series is brought to you through a grant from the Iowa Cancer Consortium, and it's a collaboration with MercyOne Cancer Center and Above and Beyond Cancer. Fred, welcome.
Thank you, Dr.
So
Deming.
speaking of Above and Beyond Cancer, Fred was part of our journey in 2018 when we went to Tibet and did the circumambulation of Mount Kailash, and that's going to be featured in our conversation. So Fred grew up on a farm near Stanton, Iowa, then got a master's in fine arts, a bachelor's degree, and then a master's in fine arts in Arizona, and had sort of a theatrical career for a while, and then went to law school and got his JD at Arizona, and then worked for many years as an attorney. Recently retired. We're going to talk a bit about that. And most recently, he worked for Iowa Legal Aid in the elder affairs part. And Fred was reminding me that as we were climbing in Tibet, up to 20,000 feet and circumambulating Kailash, that we had a conversation about retirement. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is retirement and aging and mindfulness and what role that plays. So welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Dr. Deming.
And Fred's also a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
And when did you first start thinking about retirement?
Probably before the pandemic, I did. And maybe pushed a little bit because my wife, Sandy, had retired. She retired like 3 years ago. And so you begin to think, spending time together and changing gears. So maybe before the pandemic, I was considering that.
And if you maybe share a little bit about your cancer journey, because my question is, did your cancer diagnosis, your cancer journey, did that play any role in how you thought about your career and what role your career played in your identity, and whether your view of life after having gone through a cancer journey changed the role that either your health or your profession played in your personal identity?
That's a great question.
That's really, why I'm the interviewer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure it did. I hadn't really thought about it, but I think, going through a diagnosis and a treatment of cancer, there's no way that doesn't affect. You have a realization of impermanence. Even though we're all vulnerable to it brings it to the forefront.
Nothing like a little 2x4 over the side of your head called cancer to wake you up to the fact that we are impermanent and that we're going to die someday. And that
so no doubt. And I think that what it does, and maybe we talked about this, I don't remember specifically at Hilsa, in the Himalayas when we talked, but it does probably got me thinking, because I've had lots of interests throughout my life. Are there other things that I might be interested in doing or exploring, or adventures, or whatever, or causes,
Right. And you can't put everything off forever, because there is no forever here on Earth for us. Yeah. So, the trip that we did, 3 weeks in the Himalayas, I think we did like 108 miles as we hiked up the Himalayas, and then the 30 miles around this magnificent sacred mountain in Tibet. What role did that journey play in helping you formulate your ideas about when you thought it would be time to retire?
I'm not sure if, other than what I said, I'm not sure whether that specifically played into retirement, other than, again, it kind of brings you up to the present.
Mhm.
I'm sure that it was part of putting the thought in my mind.
Yeah. So I think you're going to reflect a little bit on that
I
journey
am.
you did.
I
So
am.
Fred teaches mindfulness for Above and Beyond Cancer, and he also is a writer. And you've shared with me this beautiful piece. And would this be the right time to maybe
Yeah.
share that with our
Yeah,
audience?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I will, just as a brief introduction, is that this is about mindfulness. Sometimes people are really put off by the word meditation. I've been involved with the meditation for about 20 years, and here in Des Moines with a meditation group that Charlie Day founded in the 1990s. He's gone now, and we've tried to continue that tradition. And the meditation or awareness that I practice is helpful to me because it helps me deal with life. It's not an escape. And so the stories that I'm reading or the things that I'm reflecting on are just examples of how that has helped me deal with transitions in my life, or help me deal with attachments or wanting things to be different than they are. And once I've understood that concept, then I tried to look for ways to implement that in my life. So there's no one size fits all in meditation or in dealing with cancer or dealing with, in my case, what I'm going to talk a little bit about also is retirement, cross out retirement, aging. But this notion of awareness and living in the present has been helpful to me. And that's just what I wanted to share a little bit about that. So the first reading that Dr. Deming has indicated is really about the trip to Mount Kailash in Nepal and Tibet. And so I'm just going to just jump into it. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
I call it the lesson of the walking stick. I'd sent it to somebody and they referred to it as the walking stick parable, which I thought was a little presumptuous, but the lesson of the walking stick. Hiking is high on my list of worthwhile activities. It's a wonderful way to bring me into the present moment. A walking meditation. Peter Mathiasson captures the power of this in his book, The Snow Leopard. And this is a quote from that. My foot slips on a narrow ledge. In that split second, as needles of fear pierce heart and temples, eternity intersects with present time. Thought and action are not different, and stone, air, ice, sun, fear, and self are one. What is exhilarating is to extend this acute awareness into ordinary moments. There's the challenge. Hiking with a wooden walking stick is my preference. I have a favorite one made by a friend from the lateral branch of a red cedar tree from his Iowa farm. It's a tall walking stick, rusty red, with a comfortable feel in my hand, and I'm attached to this walking stick. The long staff allows me to slide my hand up or down the stick depending on the need of the hike or scramble. I prefer to use only one walking stick so that I always have a free hand. I like being able to shift it from one hand to the other depending on which side of me is close to the edge. Though I've hiked many miles with this walking stick, I did not dare take it with me on the Above and Beyond Cancer Himalaya trip in 2018. I feared that the airlines wouldn't let me travel with it one way or the other, and it would be lost by confiscation. Before the trip, I considered buying a collapsible walking stick, but returned a purchase without ever using it. I resolved to find a wooden walking stick in Nepal. What could be more natural and practical? To start our Himalayan trip, we flew to Kathmandu, Nepal, elevation 4,593 feet above sea level. Here we began orientation and made visits to hospitals and sites of the city. Next, we flew to Nepal Gunj with elevation only 540 feet above sea level. This is near the border of India and tiger country. Rice fields, crowing roosters, and early morning chanting in the humidity and heat. My efforts to save a spider during our morning outdoor yoga. Next, we flew in a small plane to Simikot, landing on a dramatic mountain airstrip, 9,500 feet elevation, surrounded by high peaks. Simikot in northwest Nepal is our starting point for the trek to Tibet, China, and sacred Mount Kailash. I reminded Bakal our Iowa guide for Above and Beyond Cancer, that I was looking for a wood walking stick. Bacall put out the word to our Sherpas. I don't know how it was acquired, but Bacall brought me a crooked, spindly, short walking stick, tan-colored and speckled. None of the Sherpas knew what kind of tree originated the stick. I wondered if it was a spare or a rejected local's walking stick. I loved this funky walking stick immediately. It had a funny shape at the top, which worked great for a handhold. The stick was light and thin. During the hike, I found it was flexible and incredibly resilient. At one point, the stick helped me avoid a fall on a steep, rocky section. It flexed when other sticks would have snapped. It became my constant and close hiking companion for the next 100 miles of trekking in the Himalaya mountains. Now, this story is about my attachment to this new hiking stick. Nepal is considered primarily a Hindu country. Still, there were lots of bumper stickers and signs in Kathmandu reminding that the Buddha was born in Nepal. On our trek in northeast Nepal, we recognized villages with Buddhist inhabitants by the colored prayer flags on a high pole. Before we got to Tibet, we visited a Buddhist monastery near Yalbang, Nepal, and our Sherpas seem to personify Buddhist bodhisattvas who dedicate their lives to freeing all from suffering before they themselves enter nirvana. The Buddha's teaching to end suffering was introduced to me when a friend recommended Stephen Batchelor's book, Buddhism Without Beliefs. The Buddha taught a practice to end suffering, in my case, possibly to reduce suffering. It was an eye-opener for me to recognize that I increase my suffering by holding on to my suffering, what I want things to be now rather than moving forward in a positive way. Holding on to attachments in opposition to the reality of the moment creates suffering. Realizing this is a step toward reducing suffering, if wise enough to let go. The Serenity Prayer recognizes this same practice. Holding on to wanting things to be different at this moment creates suffering. The Buddha also taught a practice of meditation to help with realizing harmful attachments and seeing more clearly. Yes, I realized I was attached to my new walking stick. And my thoughts turned toward how I might get it home after the trek. My colleagues recognized my attachment also. We talked about the possibilities, claiming a need for the walking stick as a medically necessary cane, or cutting it in half and packing the broken parts. On the fourth day of our trek, at a lunch atop high above tree line in the Nepal Himalayas, Dr. Deming teased me about my attachment to the walking stick, in opposition to the Buddha's teaching and basic honesty in considering it a need for the walking stick as a cane. Later that afternoon, on a section of long climb on a wide trail, a light rain began falling. I was hiking with a group at the front of the trek. I stopped to put on my raincoat and rain cover for my pack, as well as for a toilet break. In my haste to get back on the trail and catch up with my group, I left my walking stick behind. I'd gone some distance up the trail before I realized my mistake. My attachment triggered an immediate pang of panic. How far back was the walking stick? I headed back down the mountain that I just labored up. I met Dr. Deming and others coming up the trail. No one had noticed the walking stick. Dr. Deming pointed out my attachment. Okay, let it go. If I don't find it, it's only a walking stick. Still, I went down the mountain further, and around the next bend, my walking stick was leaning against the rocks where I'd left it. I smiled, hurried back up the mountain, my attachment remaining intact. My Himalayan walking stick accompanied me and assisted me with our challenging 3-day Kora with other pilgrims, circumambulating around the sacred Mount Kailash over the nearly 19,000 feet elevation of Dolmala Pass. Success. With our return to Kathmandu, Nepal for the flight home, there was more speculation with colleagues about success in getting my walking stick on the airplane. I decided to just bring it to the airport and see if I could carry it on, using it as a walking stick. No problem at the Kathmandu airport with security or getting it on the plane. No one paid any attention to my walking stick, which I put in the overhead bin. Wow, maybe my worry and speculations were needless. We changed planes at Istanbul, Turkey, which is a very large airport. The first checkpoint paid no attention to my walking stick. I was thinking positive when we got to the final security checkpoint. A woman security agent first stopped my colleague Bob with his collapsed hiking poles in his day pack, but with minimal interaction, Bob was okay to continue with his hiking poles. At my turn, the woman security person immediately demanded my walking stick. I don't know if she spoke English or not, but my plea that it was only a walking stick and prior security had okayed it had no effect. My colleagues, Dana, Judd, and Mary, were even more vocal in defense of my walking stick. The security woman took my walking stick and mimed hitting herself on the head with it. She followed up by walking over to a large trash bin and forcefully chucked it in. Dana moved to retrieve it, and my non-attachment kicked in. It certainly made no sense to create an international incident or spend time in an Istanbul jail for a walking stick. I dissuaded Dana, and we moved on. I felt grateful, and I felt happy. Dana memorably endeared herself to me, and I have wonderful memories about the trek and walking stick. Further attachment to the walking stick could have been a powerful example of how we create and increase our suffering by attachment or not seeing clearly. Perhaps the moment I let go of my walking stick in the Istanbul airport was a subtle realization and a reminder what I struggle to articulate about life, about my above and beyond cancer journey. It isn't about the walking stick. It's about the journey, whatever it may be.
That's great. Thank you for reminding me. I'd totally forgotten about the walking stick. I can imagine my needling you about that. Here's someone who's preaching, be here now, don't attach, and then that's an extra 2 miles to go retrieve his walking stick. Yeah. But it is true that, we have everything we need right here, this moment right here for perfect happiness. It's when we think that we don't have it, that there's something we don't have that we want, or that there's something about our current condition that we don't want. That's where the discontent comes. Yeah. So how has your understanding of impermanence and non-attachment, how's that working in retirement?
Well, it's a challenge. I think you hit on something, because it's not as if there's one magic moment and I'm not faced with these dilemmas of attachment or worrying about the future or the past. And that's why I have a practice in mindfulness to try and remind me that it's constant, because life is a challenge. And retirement just happens to be kind of my most recent transition. I will say, just to kind of go back, is that I think I was fortunate when I got my cancer diagnosis that I'd already been practicing meditation. And it was extremely helpful in kind of keeping me in the present rather than rushing ahead to what the fears and what could be or regrets. So I've been practicing, and yet when I come to retirement, which is what my next reading is about, it can sneak up on you again, and suddenly I'm attached to the way it was,
Uh-huh.
or don't know where to go, you know.
And have you been trying to clean out your house as well as part of, I mean, I think about, I got closets full of stuff that I haven't used in 20 years that I wouldn't even know if they was gone, but trying to get rid of
Yeah.
it is hard.
It is hard. It's one of my goals.
Okay.
I haven't been very good yet, but no, it's on my list. I've been doing projects though, but
So before we go into your next reading, talk a little bit about what your profession, how that contributes to your identity. And I think of the role of being a physician, what that means in terms of, number one, the opportunity for me to every day have this very tangible way of helping other people, very specifically. I mean, I don't have to think about where am I going to volunteer, what am I going to get this opportunity to help others each and every day. And I also have this identity by virtue of the title I have and the job I have, and of providing me something. So I in many ways, I'm attached to that identity and the idea of retiring and not having that immediate gratification of being helping people, and also losing the identity and needing to have what's going to be the structure of my life if I retire. How does your being a lawyer, Iowa legal aid, helping people every day, how did you transition, adjust to not having that outlet for helping somebody every day in a very structured way, and being in a role as a professional, as an attorney?
You've hit on exactly what I've been struggling with. And it was a bit of a surprise because the law was a second career for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had done a lot of adventures in my theatrical career and changes and so forth. And so I was totally surprised that when I made that decision, that it was a challenge. And that's really what this is about.
Okay, let's go to the next reading
then. Reflections on retirement, and I've crossed out retirement and wrote aging. I recently retired from employment as an attorney with Iowa Legal Aid, working for not-for-profit legal services for nearly 20 years was more than employment for me. Exactly what you're talking about. The past 16 years, I was helping people through an elder law hotline, providing free legal advice and assistance on civil legal issues. A significant portion of the issues dealt with transitions relating to aging. Some of the more difficult situations stem from the refusal or inability to plan or adjust to transitions. And this led to great stress, pain, and family conflict. Seeing this and helping people through this, I resolved to be proactive with transitions as I age, and I retired shortly after turning 70. During my life, I've made numerous transitions that were exciting adventures, leaps of faith, so I was surprised by the unsettling challenge of my proactive retirement. First, I don't like the term retirement. There's something in this term that suggests being turned out to pasture, worn out, no longer useful. A friend suggested calling it repurposing, or maybe it is rebooting or retooling. Second, friends, family, acquaintances, everyone asks, what are your plans in retirement? What are you doing? Unhelpful pressure. Third, I was surprised that my feeling of identity was so tied up with being a legal aid attorney. Back to number one, I'm no longer a meaningful contributor to society. Fourth, I miss my work schedule and time with colleagues, friends at work, plus it was built-in exercise, biking to work. Fifth, the transition is also a readjustment with my wife, who retired 3 years prior. Now, I should have recognized this challenge when she told friends She was celebrating her last week before my retirement date. Sixth, back to the first issue again, even if I think of repurposing or retooling, what can I do? I'm removed from my previous career, work, and interests, and who is interested in a 70-year-old versus young creativity and energy? Seventh, there is a realization that I am physically and mentally wearing out. This is true of all of us, but with aging, it becomes more noticeable. Previous to working as an attorney, my career was in theater. The last employment was with a Shakespeare theater company. And with aging, Shakespeare's famous quote from his play, As You Like It, comes to mind. All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school, and then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow, then a soldier, full of strange oaths, and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick and quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon lined, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th stage shifts into the lean, slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again to childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Shakespeare had an amazing ability to recognize and articulate the human experience in his characters and plays. I guess I'm in the 6th stage, which shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon with spectacles on nose and pouch on side. I do sometimes use a fanny pack still. Next up is the 7th age of second childishness and mere oblivion. It's clear where we're all headed, not so encouraging. Another Shakespeare quote may be more helpful. Hamlet tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. This brings me to the point of my scribbling of thoughts on how to embrace retirement, cross out retirement, aging. Maybe aging is a time to reflect that's difficult to find when raising a family, involved in employment, driven by ambition and dreams. So I'm reflecting on this 6th stage of life, cross out retirement, aging. I was raised in the Christian tradition, and with exposure to people from other cultures and backgrounds and beliefs, I left the church. Not the teachings of Jesus, but the beliefs required to avoid eternal hell. I rejected this divisiveness of religious beliefs that assured heaven for some and hell for others. Close to 20 years ago, I was introduced to the teachings of the Buddha when a friend suggested the book Buddhism Without Belief by Stephen Batchelor. I had no interest in replacing my Christian heritage with another religion, no interest in reincarnation or religious dogma or ritual. However, I was aware that I was not living fully in the present, but always living for what was to come. The book was a mind opener for me. It explained the Buddha's teaching as a practice for ending, or in my case, perhaps reducing suffering. Now, the Buddha never claimed to be a god, but is reported to have said he was awake. The Buddha's teaching acknowledges that life is challenging, suffering. We're all susceptible to illness, aging, death, and countless roadblocks in life. We can either create suffering from these life challenges or not. By hanging on to wanting things to be different than they really are, I create suffering. There's a cliche Buddhist saying that pain is inevitable in life, suffering is optional. By letting go of attachments to wanting things to be other than they are at the moment, suffering, anxiety dissipates, and I can focus on moving forward to address the challenges of life in a positive way. Now, this isn't a concept that only the Buddhists recognize. They oft quoted, "When life gives you a lemon, make lemonade," very simply articulates the same. Not helpful. It's not helpful to stew about getting a lemon when you wanted a cookie. Many others have articulated similar understanding. For example, the Serenity Prayer adopted by Alcoholics Anonymous. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Shantideva, an 8th century Buddhist monk, shared this view. If there is a remedy when trouble strikes, what reason is there for dejection? And if there is no help for it, what use is there in being glum? In Luke 12:25 through 26, Jesus said, "And which of you, by being anxious, can add a cubit to your span of life? If then you are not able to do as small a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest?" The Tao Te Ching has numerous helpful verses. One of my favorite is from verse 15. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? And John Milton, from Paradise Lost, wrote, "The mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven." I tested the Buddhist teachings, and it's clear I create and hold on to suffering with my thoughts. I suffer when I focus on wanting life to be different than the reality of the present, the now. It's clear that when I let go of this attachment, this focusing on my unhappiness with the present situation, the suffering ends, or in my case, reduces. The problem is applying these teachings as a life practice. It's difficult to let go of my anxiety, living in the past or waiting for the future. My mind has a lifetime pattern of thoughts and worries that can cloud seeing clearly for dealing with the present reality, such as aging or illness. The Buddha taught a practice for what we call meditation to counter the tyranny of thoughts from the busy mind. Meditation is fundamental to the Buddha's teaching to end suffering. The practice taught by the Buddha was to recognize thoughts and return focus to the present, such as awareness to your breath, or focusing on walking, or standing, or nature, or art. It can be almost anything. This awareness of mindfulness in choosing the present reality is the beginning of the possibility of freedom from my thought patterns. Since discovering this Buddhist teaching, I've practiced meditation as a way to face the challenges of life's reality, including my bout with cancer. Through the simple practice of awareness, mindfulness, and refocusing the mind on the present moment through meditation, I discovered the power of not having to follow every thought. I discovered the possibility of choice in how I face life. This possible liberation from the tyranny of my thoughts is the mind opener. I'm more than my thoughts, more than a slave to the pattern of my thoughts. It's freeing and very challenging to break the habitual following of thoughts, the stewing and obsessing on worries, conflicts, past, future, or whatever. However, minus the past worries and worries about the future, dealing with the present is more manageable for me. This isn't putting my head in the sand. It helps me see and deal with reality of life in a positive way. Discovering the space between thoughts also helps me respond with more understanding and compassion rather than a knee-jerk reaction that may be harmful to others and to me. No culture or religion has a corner on this understanding. With my work as an attorney, I had clients that could be completely undone by a minor challenge, and others who dealt with the extremist tragedies and hardships in the most positive and upbeat way. This was without any Buddhist teaching or meditation, but with an acceptance of reality that lessened their suffering. Is this ability in dealing positively with suffering innate, discovered, or learned from religion or culture? Meditation as a practice revealed to me, or perhaps reminded me, of this way to live life. Buddhism reaffirmed my commitment to the teachings of Jesus and opened me to the wisdom of other cultures and religions. Jesus said, "Whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it." Luke 10:13. I like to think that children live in the present moment. Perhaps awareness in the present is the kingdom of God. There's no magic to meditation and living life in the present moment. Like any other skill, the practice of liberation from tyranny of my thoughts takes wanting or reducing suffering, and it takes practice. Even with understanding this liberation from creating more suffering, I still hang on for a while before accepting reality, such as aging and moving forward. So, reflecting on my retirement, cross out retirement, on aging, can I embrace the present, this sixth age with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, as an opportunity to explore new challenges of life? Can I focus on the present with understanding, compassion, and love for myself and others? Can I embrace the journey, the path, the Tao, nature, the now, God, or whatever encompasses the awe of life? My conclusion, I can either create suffering from hanging on to wanting to be young and foolish again, or I can make lemonade.
So you're making lemonade?
I'm trying.
Okay.
I certainly am trying.
That was good. I think that I've been familiar with Stephen Batchelor's book, Buddhism Without Belief. And really, as you pointed out, it's a practical way of living life to try to have more joy in life. And some people, although the simple tenets, the Four Noble Truths are pretty simple, sometimes the language gets in the way. And one thing that I think is helpful for people is if instead of focusing on the word suffering, it's discontent, that we all have some discontent, and that the cause of discontent is that we're dissatisfied because we want things to be different than they are. I can't get no satisfaction. You get satisfaction from a new car, and and then it gets a scratch, and then a year later somebody has a newer model, and it just doesn't provide you endless satisfaction. So we're just dissatisfied, and that the remedy for dissatisfaction is to appreciate what you have and not always be wanting something different. A wise man said that the twin thieves of happiness are regrets of yesterday and worry about tomorrow. That if we just are here in the present moment, yesterday isn't hurting us. Tomorrow could be 1,000 different things. And you're right, if we call it mindfulness as opposed to meditation, it doesn't conjure up all sorts of rituals. It's just, how do we be present? And mindfulness is practice. If you want bigger biceps, I can tell you how to get a bigger biceps. I will give you a 6-week course of doing curls. We'll measure before and after 6 weeks. You will have a bigger biceps. If you want more contentment in your life, there is a path to that. Instead of doing biceps curls, let's have you be mindful for 15 minutes a day. That's the workout, and it is evidence-based that you will become more content. It's practice, and it doesn't have to be any sort of belief in anything supernatural. It's just a evidence-based way of finding more contentment in your life.
Yeah, you articulate it exactly the way I feel.
So what are you?
And I particularly agree. I sometimes use the word challenge. Life is a challenge, but it's anxiety. The word suffering seems to turn people off. I agree.
Yeah, like the first noble truth is life is suffering, and the second is desire is the cause of suffering, and it's really you just recognize that the human nature is to be dissatisfied, and it's baked into our genes that we want to be better. We want, and part of that is what's caused us to be taller, faster, more articulate, and more knowledgeable than generations and generations and generations before. So it's part of baked into what a human being is, but also baked into what a human being is the capacity to learn how to be present and be mindful. And it doesn't always require a pill or a drink or endlessly shopping on Amazon for that perfect thing that won't be perfect once you've had it. So I appreciate the role that mindfulness plays in helping us find contentment.
Yeah, I'm drawn to the fact that it's recognized. In fact, one of the readings I do for the Tuesday night meditation, oftentimes I'm looking for things that have explained that concept, that have nothing to do with Buddhism. Our town, Emily is so aware in the play Our Town, that she realizes that humans ever aware of life as they live it. There's so many examples in every culture. And in fact, in kind of thinking about this conversation with you, I was just hit over the head with two of the things that I've heard you read so many times from John O'Donohue, and his one on courage in particular, but also new beginnings, which is what transition is all about.
Yes, because every day, every moment is an opportunity for a new beginning. We can set it in. And the practice of mindfulness, I mean, it isn't like you're perfect at it. In fact, when you try to not be thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, you might be able to do it for 5 seconds and then it creeps back in. But then you go, no, I realize that. I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to be present. And it's coming back. It's realizing that your mind has gone wandering and bringing it back. That's the practice. It's not that you beat yourself up because your mind wandered. No, that's my human mind wandering. The power to bring it back to this moment. That's the exercise that eventually, slowly brings more peace into this chaos of life where, we're just dangling by a thread. You can be, I saw a patient today who's doing great, no cancer's back, but her dog tripped her. She fell and broke her elbow, had to have reconstruction, couldn't use her arm. Now she's told she's not supposed to golf or play pickleball. And it's like, all she was doing was walking the dog. There is just, danger lurking everywhere. So what do you, I still believe that, it not worrying about yesterday, not fretting over tomorrow, it doesn't mean that we can't reflect on yesterday and learn maybe something about ourselves and lessons learned from reflecting on yesterday. And it doesn't mean not planning and using your own agency for tomorrow. So now that you're in the midst of aging as your life endeavor, what are you doing about just thoughtfully planning for tomorrow? What do you have? What are things you would like to do in the next few years?
Well,
the good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
I think one of the things that I kind of set myself up is that I wanted to see if there were other things I hadn't thought about. So I'm using this period right now. In other words, I could have continued work. I could have also continued volunteering, but I made a conscious choice to say I'm going to stop that right now to see if there's other things. So I'm really in an exploration mode. And so I think that's what the writing is all about.
Do you get satisfaction? Do
I
you
do.
get joy from
I do.
writing?
It's rather surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, how often have I had time, to actually sit down and write just for the joy of writing a thought, a story, memory. Another thing which I'm working on right now is a hike I took in 1994. It was supposed to be a 5-day backcountry hike that turned into a 6-day because I hurt my knee the first afternoon on the hike down and into the Grand Canyon. And I'm finding that very enjoyable, just creating a story out of that, because there was a transition both for me and my hiking partner, who was quite skilled, and I was a novice in that kind of a hike. So
Gotcha. Does it end with you having to cut your arm off in order? No. Okay, that's been written already. Yeah. But being outdoors in nature still provides you joy. Yeah. Physical activity, especially walking, hiking.
Yes, it's more. I mean, I'm participating in more events. I mean, I love the Tuesday morning with Mary hiking and yoga with Above and Beyond Cancer. In fact, I was going to ask you about the spin class tonight. I haven't done that.
Yes. So, yes, come join me every Wednesday after the cancer education series. I teach spin class, and come join us. It's for anyone. It's everyone pedals at their own speed and puts as much gear or as little gear as they want into it. And we have great music, and it's a great fellowship. And in the process, you get a little sweating, and you get a little huffing and puffing, and those are a good practice to keep your body fit.
Yeah. One of the things that I don't think this really hits on, and maybe we haven't, but even when I was dealing with my cancer treatment and recovery and retirement as well, it's hard to reflect, to be still. I've always been an active person. So, the thought of just reflecting, writing, even though I enjoy the writing, once I'm writing, that's busy. But, to say, I'm trying to explore, are there things in life that I've not considered?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to be still, just be still.
Yeah. Well, I think, some people, we call it workaholic. I mean, you don't have, it's an excuse for not having the time to reflect or to plan, to make yourself so busy because you don't feel comfortable sitting in silence doing something as reflective as that. It's kind of easier to just be on a treadmill with things coming at you, and you don't have to make any decisions for yourself. I mean, you just keep doing what you're doing, and you do more of it, and you don't ever stop to think, is this really what I want to do? Because you're so busy doing it.
Yeah. I'm finding that that's a little bit of a challenge to say, am I really open to the possibilities, to the new beginnings? So that's why I was drawn. I've reread that New Beginnings one, because there is a challenge to that.
Yeah, let's go there. Maybe we'll end with the new beginning. Let me put my glasses on. I don't have the book, but I have it on my phone, and this is a reflection from "To Bless the Space Between Us" by John O'Donohue, and this blessing for a new beginning. So John O'Donohue is a Catholic priest, lived his whole life in Ireland, died at the age of 52. This book was actually published posthumously, and I take this book on our journeys, and every day before we begin walking, use one of it as a reflection, sort of setting the intention of the day, sort of getting somebody to think. And this one is the one I always use the very first day before we set foot on the trail. But I've also, you imagine as you're listening to this, that you're with us in the Himalayas, and we're going to do our first day of what's going to be like 15 days of walking, and this is going to be the first day. Or I've also used it at a graduation, a new beginning, at a retirement, a new beginning, and even at a funeral, which represents another way of a new beginning. But so whatever you're getting ready to begin, come with us. Here's a blessing for a new beginning. In out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you are ready to emerge. For a long time, it's watched your desire, feeling emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, and wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease and risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you.
Thank you, Dr. Deming.
Thank you, Fred.
That was wonderful.
This has been great. Thanks for sharing your vulnerability, the fact that you're not telling us you've got all the answers and here's the way to live life, but that nobody. I don't. Well, we'll leave the Buddha out, but I'm sure the Dalai Lama will even admit, this is a lifelong practice. And the reason it requires that is because, we're wired to kind of want things to be different. Yeah. And realizing that we've got everything we need for joy and happiness is worthy of mindfulness. Thank you. Thanks for being part of this.
Thank you. Yeah.
And come join us for spin class. And you too. Come on down. Thanks for joining us for the Cancer Education Series. Please come again next week. If you want to watch this conversation again, or you want to refer this conversation to people who haven't been able to watch it tonight, this becomes a video podcast that you can see at the MercyOne Cancer Center website, or you can go to the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel to watch it again. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.